Michael with United Veterans Worldwide. Excited to have Ashley with us today. She's a friend of my wife's growing up, and she's had a wealth of experience in life. It's made her an old soul, so to speak, and I'm excited to interview her today and to hear her journey. And maybe I'll have her introduce herself to the group here now. And Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I would say I'm a little bit nervous, but that's to be expected, right?
Yep.
I'm more like excited, but yeah. So I'm Ashley Rose Lisonbee. I live in Highland, Utah. I'm a wife and mother of 6, but I have 4 living. My oldest is 23, and my youngest is 7. I've got 3 boys. Or excuse me, 4 girls, 2 boys, 3 girls, 1 boy here. And I am, so I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of different things. I originally was back in schooling in 1998. I had a scholarship in fine art and also was going to BYU for dance. I then after that got married, and I went back to school at New York Institute of Photography and got my degree in photography, and did that, created my own company for about 12 years doing photography.
Including taking our family picture, I believe. Was that right?
Yeah, that was back in those days. Yep. I did a lot of family pictures, a lot of weddings, a lot of babies. I really loved doing baby shots and portraits and things. I also did schooling in Pilates and yoga movement, somatic healing. And so I've taught yoga, Pilates, and dance for about 23 years. And then I went back to school after a kind of a large, all the trauma that was on my back kind of came to a peak. And right before that, I went back to schooling 7 years ago to U of U in neurobehavioral science, energy healing, and relational healing. So I graduated literally the week before my last baby was born. I was almost 40. So I'm 44 now. And I've been counseling for since then, except for I had a big collapse, obviously, that we're going to talk about that a little bit, about my fall. And so I took a couple years off because of that to discover even more depth that's just added, I feel like, to my character as a wife, as a mother, as a person. And especially as a counselor, I never knew that I could I feel like people have always told me, at least, I don't know for sure, that I'm an empath. And whatever that means to you is great. But I do feel a lot. I would say, if you're going to color code me, I'm white, yellow. So I'm like a peacemaker with I like a lot of fun. I'm also associated with the refugees here international, Liftinghandsintetnational. And they're a world organization that helps refugees and just humanitarian efforts in general all over the world. And I do a lot of promoting for them. I also was helping when all the refugees came in here to Utah several years ago, and I would actually go up there and we'd find out names and we'd find out their needs, and then we actually go personally get to know the families and then make deliveries to try and just get filled in. So I feel like, that's kind of me in a nutshell introduction of who I am. I love all things art, dance, nature, psych, faith, healing, and just fun. I do have a really upbeat, kind of flighty personality, except for when I collapsed. That was probably the most humbling, hardest years of my life and also my family's. So it definitely helped me grow in a depth I never thought was quite possible.
Yeah. And I want this audience to know why I've have Ashley on here today to talk. Trauma is the language of the world we live in today. Many of you have gone through your own experiences. You've battled depression, anxiety, PTSD, TBI memory, whatever. And what I wanted to do is showcase an example of someone who's gone through some hard things, and Ashley has gone through some hard things, and she is on her way out of all of that and is recovering in so many ways that it's just wonderful to talk with her today. So Ashley, can you take us back in time a little bit and share with us a little bit of your vulnerability when it comes to some of the trauma that held you down for a while and you're now on the outside of it?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, when we talk about trauma, so I'll go into my counseling a little bit. Like, it's just a general feeling of, like, that you're not safe. And that is, like, one of the most foundational needs of us as human beings, is to feel safe. To learn, we need to feel safe. To feel connected to it, we need to feel safe. To progress in this world, we need to feel safe. And so when you're a child, you need those basic needs met, right, by your parents to feel safe. So you need food, water, shelter, love, connection, stability, right? And usually those kids who grow up in those homes have a foundation with a nervous system that is more mature and more intact once they move into adulthood, because their nervous system isn't underdeveloped from not feeling safe. So going back a little bit in time, I'm not going to go into specifics, just because, like, it is, a lot of the experiences are really, really personal, and does involve, like, you know, close family members. And so it's not like I want to throw anybody under the bus.
Sure.
Because I hold no malice. Life is what it is. You know, life happens, and none of us know what we're doing, and none of us are perfect. But I did, for me, in my experience as a child, I was the only girl. I had 3 brothers. I grew up on a mountain in Alpine, like a couple miles from the next neighbor. Well, my friend Marcy, who's your wife, we used to go through the fields. But I was alone a lot. And I would say the environment of my home and the relationships around me in my home felt unsafe to me. That was my experience. I'm not going to go into specifics.
Yeah.
As I grew up into teenage years, I would say, because of that foundation, I was really shy. So when you grow up in a house that feels more unsafe, or maybe NPD, maybe a little narcissistic, or controlling, you usually, as a child, will go 2 pathways. You'll go to narcissism yourself, or that type, like a predator, to, like, oh, I'm going to protect myself. I'm going to, kind of be hardened by it. Mm-hmm. Or you go like the passive peacemaker. Well, that's more my personality, obviously. And also that's where I went to heavily, which later would develop into codependency, people-pleasing, self-sacrificial to a fault type of personality, right? And I'm a giver, but I love that. That's actually, I feel like, my ability to feel and my ability to give is one of my greatest gifts that I have come out of this with. Mm-hmm. And if you as a person feel like you're the same, like, don't let those things harden you, because that is a gift. However, you need to learn boundaries, which I didn't have till I was like 42. But anyway, that's a whole other stuff. So growing up into my teen years, I was shy. I was with Marcy, your wife, and she was very in the limelight and student body president, and, could talk to people easily. I felt like that was always inside of me, but I masked it because inside it was hurting. I didn't feel. And so I went to school because of my shyness, as a teenage girl, and growing up going up into high school, you want that feeling of acceptance by peers, right? You kind of go away from the parents and you go to peer parentification somewhat, where you kind of listen and you want your peers to notice you, have this connection with peers. Well, that was actually really, really hard years for me. It was already hard, but it became more hard. Because when I was shy, I was a dancer. I was an artist, a really good artist. And I was also a model. So when I was 14, 15, I got scouted to be a model. And I, of course, in those years of my life, I didn't see it. I could never see it. I just felt like, well, people at school don't talk to me. And boys don't ask me out. And so then I was funneled through these people who saw me, who said, hey, we're going to pick you up. We're going to send you to Europe. And, I felt like, oh, I'm connecting with somebody. Mm-hmm. Somebody thinks I'm worth something. Because in that moment in our life, when you grow up with no safety, you question your self-worth. You question if I'm enough, if people aren't talking to you. And hindsight, I now realize, like, people were probably just intimidated, right? Or at least that's what I'm told. Well, I still don't see that. But anyways, what I got out of that, the core foundation of my personality became, I'm not enough. I'm not seen. I'm not heard. I'm just not good enough. So it was really hard on my self-esteem. So I graduated early, went to college early. I actually took off and lived in Greece. They put me out there living, and I was supposed to go to several other countries, to Italy and France and all that. And pretty much that was going to be my life, working as a model. And when I got out there, I was so grateful for my faith, because first of all, you know, even though as a child I did feel unsafe with the environment, I was given the foundation of faith, and that there was a God and there was a Savior. And I feel like I'm the type of spirit or person that really is a truth seeker on my own. My mom is a convert, and I knew, because she would tell me, actually, you have to figure this out for yourself. Like, you're not going to get it from me. And so I always knew I had to seek out truth for myself. So when I got out to Europe, I ended up bagging that whole experience because it was very dangerous. And I was in, I would say, almost a trafficking type situation at one point, which I got away from. So I came back from that, and I went straight back to BYU, started doing my degree, anyways, got married. But before I got married, I didn't tell you this, Mike, but I actually had a traumatic brain injury. So about 3 months before I got married, I was on a wakeboard. And of course, I love the water. It's totally my thing. But I was just trying to do all the fun stuff. And I got in a really bad wreck wakeboarding. My upper cervical spine bones just did like an Indian burn. And I was double. I was throwing up. I had excruciating pain in the top of my head. I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. At that time, we were just flying out to London. So I actually spent my time in London in doctors' offices trying to figure out how to help me. However, I couldn't get help till I got home. But that's, I wanted to add that in because I know that a lot of who you work with have traumatic injuries. So I do too. I've had an upper cervical spine injury that affected my brain. So that'll go into what happened when COVID hit me.
Yeah.
You know, so anyways, so speed up a little bit. I'll just touch on a couple other things that were quite like kind of trauma points for me, because when I'm talking about trauma, whether you're going off to war and fighting a battle, I was at battle. I was in a war in my mind, in my body, that I could not get away from. I couldn't just snap out of it and just get away from. So when I got married, I got pregnant with my first, and 28 weeks into my first pregnancy, I had grand mal seizures. They took me into MRIs, and they found a large, what they thought might be like a big tumor in my right lateral ventricle of my brain. Later, to realize that, well, now speeding up 20 some odd years, the doctors are like, you're fine. It's just, you were actually born in utero with a different type of brain, malformation brain on your right lateral ventricle. It's just different than your left side. So they were calling it a cyst. Now they're just calling it something I was born with. Back then, they were saying, oh my gosh, you're going to have surgery. So I went from the trauma of just being told, you know, it's all mental, right?
Right.
Especially with physical stuff, or maybe even, you know, when you're at combat, like it's a huge mental game. If you think your life's in danger, your life's in danger inside of you, right? And
correct.
So you are in flight. You are in fight or flight. And so I would say with my head situation, because I had no really firm answers, and I kept getting overturned to different doctors and different doctors and different doctors, telling me different stories about it, I would say I was constantly in some degree of fight or flight, like for 24 years. So I was wondering if it was dangerous, if it was safe, if I was going to live, if I was going to die. I mean, I was told that you might not be able to have any more kids. So after Charlie was born, my first, and he was born healthy, speed up 6 years. They put, can you hear me with that noise?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm outside. the doctors decided to put an IUD, which is a type of thing they put in a female so that you can't have babies. Well, they did that because they were scared for my life. So 6 years later, I really wanted to have more kids, even though they were like, we don't know. And I felt in my heart that there was more. And so I actually, right as I was having that thought, the IUD embedded in my right side and caused a huge infection, of which I was hospitalized for like 28 days, but I might be wrong. It might be less than that. I have to ask my husband on that because it's all kind of a blur. But at that point, when I was in the hospital, that infection almost took my life. I remember the doctors coming in to me saying, just prepare yourself. You probably won't have any more kids. We're probably going to have to give you a hysterectomy. And I just prayed, and I had this overwhelming feeling come over me, like, no. Like, I felt at least 2 more in the room with me that day. So I got through that. It was a crazy situation, how I pulled through, but got through it. My body healed, and I got pregnant with my second girl.
You know, Ashley, I appreciate your vulnerability on here and sharing these experiences. And, you've touched on something that's really critical. This fight or flight that you're mentioning is one of the main symptoms of fight or flight is anxiety, is depression. And when that fight or flight doesn't turn off, then your energy levels are low, the memory is low, behavior fluctuates, and many of our veterans can relate to that experience that you're sharing, because fight or flight doesn't turn off. It stays in fight, which means 0 to 10 in half a second, and it's not good for families, it's not good for work, it's not good for other things too. But it's all things to work on and overcome. But yeah, please keep going.
Yeah, so like with the nervous system dysregulated, you will go into, I think for you and most veterans, it's fight, right? Because you're ready to fight. So it's either fight, flight, freeze, or I was going to fawn a lot. Where I just become so scared, I'd become like comatose and disassociate, and my body would just start shutting down. It's like my body was just like, no more. I can't take any more. The end. And so so that happened. I had two more girls after that experience. So that definitely lifted the load. But in amongst all of that, there was a lot of other life traumas going on. There was a huge trauma with my immediate family, my parents. Really heart-wrenching, really hard thing to deal with. Yeah. At the same time, I'm having another baby. We had moved over a half a dozen times, close to a dozen times. And that in and of itself, I know men can handle it a little bit better. But for a woman, and especially women that like to feel nested and grounded, it puts her into fight or flight. And also the children, because you're uprooting what is familiar to them, right? So all of these experiences I'm talking to, yes, I was in fight or flight, and I could not get out of it. And so it came to a head about 4 years ago. This was right before COVID hit. So I'll just kind of speed up to that point so we can talk about the healing part. And before that, we had built, 3 homes. I felt like this last home was it. We were finally settled. And, I was kind of at a peaceful moment in our lives, even though our finances were never really stable. So we didn't have that either. So I really couldn't grab out here for any stability. I had to find it within myself, because all of this, when we're in fight or flight, it's the tornado whipping around you, which you have no control over, but all you have control over is standing in the center of that tornado and looking up and breathing and just doing what you can, right, in the center of that tornado. So we moved into this house, and then COVID hit, and then my girls came to me and were like, we want to homeschool. So of course I said yes, even though I don't homeschool. It's just, I don't know. But I said yes. So they all came home. And then my dad went to jail. My mom broke down with an issue in her body where she had to have an extreme surgery and ended up in the ICU. I didn't have to. I chose to take care of her out of the ICU for the next 3 months so she wouldn't starve to death. All while I had just had another C-section. And also my dad, who I call my heart dad growing up. So my real dad went to jail. My heart dad died. And then one of my closest girlfriends, not Marcy, but one of my closest girlfriends that I've made as an adult, who we taught yoga together. She actually took over my classes when I had my last baby. She committed suicide. Except for, we both were struggling with postpartum after our last babies. And I remember seeing her for the last time at a grocery store. We just held each other and we were crying and telling each other that we could get through this. Like, the fog was lift, we're going to be okay. And then I didn't see her again. However, this last year I had this premonition come over me to talk with her mom, and she doesn't, nor do I feel like it was a suicide. So it was something worse. So, and I won't talk about it, but anyways, a lot of things all going on. Well, because of all the pressure, I also had another, during all that time, and I'm homeschooling, I had another miscarriage, throws off female hormones. I ended up getting so weak because I was trying to do it all right. At the same time, I had a church calling, and I was helping the refugees up in Salt Lake. Trying to be wonderful for it all. And I'm sure you guys in combat do the same thing, right? Like, when you have to step up, like, you show up and you start fighting, you start helping, you start rescuing people, and that's what I was doing.
And this is where we would take the things that we're struggling with and we just bury it, which is not a solving, right? It eventually comes out.
Yes, and so it did. Like, I just collapsed. I was actually also teaching dance at the time, and couldn't go back to teaching dance one morning. The owner got upset at me and said I could never come back. So I lost my job. Well, my job away from home, not my job being a mother. I mean, that is my greatest, and it is my job. But my little job outside of the home.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden my body was breaking down because of the current circumstances, but also the leading up to, I mean, I had been in fight or flight. My counselor said probably my entire life. She said, Ash, I don't think you've ever known what it feels like to feel really calm and truly safe within yourself. So I've spent 14 years in therapy, off and on, not constantly. I'm saying, like, to get better, like, I'm really realistic with people with what they've been through, especially with trauma, or like for me, it was complex PTSD. It's not just going to be a book. It's not just going to be a pill. It's not just going to be yoga. It's not just going to be, 12 counseling sessions and you're done and you're free. It's different for everyone, and it takes time, and sometimes it takes a long time.
Yep.
And kind of like when you start, you'll take 2 steps forward and then you'll kind of like fall back. And that's okay. That's actually what it's like. And also in our lifetime, really, I don't know if we'll ever be free of the imprints that we've been through. And that's okay too, because I don't think that's what this life is about, is to feel completely whole and healed, right? That's the next life.
Yeah, right.
I think we can get close. So I've done that. I've done lots of different forms of therapy. So when I got COVID, so that kind of topped it all off at the end. I got COVID finally, like after everybody else had gotten it. And then we had to leave our house again. So we had to find a rental. And I was so sick. I was actually so sick that I couldn't walk, and they didn't know why. But for whatever reason, COVID, with my neurological different type of brain, along with a misdiagnosis, which I never had as a child, but they think I've had it my whole life, called POTS, which is postural orthostatic tracheoaudio syndrome. It's basically a nervous system dysregulation between the brain and the heart. And it's genetic, and it doesn't take your life, but it can make your life a lot harder, especially if your body has a virus or is, out of balance, or has a neck injury because of the connection to the brain to the body, which I had also working against me. So I ended up coming out of that peak of everything coming to a head. I didn't walk for almost 3 years. I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't cook. I couldn't be on my feet for more like 6 to 8 minutes at a time, or I'd faint, or I'd feel like, I would faint, or I'd have to sit down. I lost my license because, of course, like if you're going to faint, you can't drive. So I couldn't grocery shop. I couldn't dance. Literally, like, stripped to the core as a soul, like everything being taken away from you that I could imagine. I couldn't go to church because I couldn't sit on the pew for more than 8 minutes without fainting. So, I had to have people, which I'm so grateful for, but it was really hard also to accept all the help that I needed. With no real answers, because the cardiologist that I finally got into, like almost 2 years later, gave me the answers. But until that time happened, I was mentally and emotionally losing it. And I don't know who wouldn't. Like, being in that state, having your body, you're not being able to control anything in your life, and your own body even, and not having any answers.
Yeah.
I just asked God to take me home. I was like, I don't know. Like, I was getting to a point where I'm ready. Like, I wouldn't take my life, but I'm like, I just can't. And so a year ago, not this June, but last June, my husband took me to a facility. Well, we thought it was a healing facility, which for me it was not. It was like a prison. But I had to go somewhere. We had to do something because I couldn't walk. I couldn't take care of my kids. And my husband works from home. He was trying to do it all, plus be a caregiver full time to me.
You had said this facility that wasn't a healing facility.
My husband was reaching places online in his genuine, wanting to help heart. He thought he had found a good facility that just said, oh, they could help somebody, if I can't walk, and they'll feed me, and at least like a place so that could care for me until we could get into the doctor that August and try to figure out what was happening so he could get work done, and take care of the kids and, all the stress that he was under. And so I was scared to death. I was scared to death to go, but I went. I packed up, and they helped me get there. Before that, even my whole extended family and friends like Marcy were showing up to take care of me. My mom, I actually lived with her for a period of time because Matthew needed a break, and it was too much on her. She couldn't catch me every time I was going to faint. So I agreed to go. Well, I didn't know that I would be admitted to like a drug rehab type place. They didn't make that clear at all. My insurance did cover, IHC insurance did cover, which makes me kind of sick and ill to this day. But I was in there with people with, I would say, very extreme mental issues, diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there with POTS, which led to a lot of anxiety and lack of sleep, which was, creating a lot of havoc on my everything, my whole body. The lack of sleep, because of all of what was happening to me, it was starting to take my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got there, I thought that I was going to be in somewhat of a safe environment, and I wasn't. I was actually put into hell.
Ugh.
It felt like the first 2 weeks I was there, I collapsed, and they wouldn't give me my salts, which when you have POTS, you need more salt, like magnesium, potassium, sodium, those natural salts. I have to take almost 4 to 7 times the amount of salt a normal person does in their water so that I don't faint. My body can regulate. And I ended up in the ER. They didn't tell my mom. They didn't tell my family. In my mind, they about killed me. If I fainted or would fall, they didn't care. They wouldn't catch you. They wouldn't help you. Anyways, I could go all off on, how corrupt this center was, but that's not my point in sharing my story. I did stay there because I didn't know if I didn't stay there that they would consider it an AMA and then my insurance wouldn't pay, which also makes me sick. But I decided to stay because even though my body wasn't functioning, I knew in my heart if I stayed, I would learn something to give back to others. Number 2, my family would be free of the burden of me for a period of time. And 3, if I stayed, that would give them enough time, and then I could get into the doctor and hopefully get some answers to unburden everybody with what was happening to me. So I did stay, and when I got out, I got into the cardiologist. He confirmed that this wasn't all in my head and that I was dealing with a physical thing, as well as a post-traumatic brain injury, along with COVID, and COVID affecting my body with those conditions is 10 times worse than the normal person, and that's why I couldn't walk. So he gave me a lot of answers. He looked at me and said, Ash, you do not need to be on medication. You need clarity, and you need support, and you need compassion, and you need gentleness to heal, and you need safety. It's number 1, if you're in an environment that is safe, your body will start healing. So he told me, and he's the number 1 cardiologist in Utah, he said, get off all your medication, because the medical doctors were just throwing diagnoses at me and medications, when in my heart,
It worked like that for us veterans as well. We had lots of stuff the VA was prescribing over and over again as a Band-Aid for what we were trying to deal with, which sometimes was a lot of emotional and mental that led to physical.
I will say, I'm not totally dissing on medication. I know that there's a purpose for it. I know that there's a time for it. I do know that it helps people. For me, it didn't. Yeah. It made things worse. So, and I knew that, but I had a lot of voices and outside sources working against what I felt like was right for me. And so that would be my first thing I would tell all of you is, number 1, trust yourself. Along with that, number 1, trust God. That is the first thing I tell people when I counsel them. Number 1, you have to connect with a power higher than you. I know we all think we can do it all, but we can't. And the way that I actually healed was miraculous. It was 60 days in this center. I was fainting, and I collapsed on my bed that night, and I said, God, please take me now. None of this makes sense. I have no answers. My poor family, I just couldn't handle it. And he didn't. And so the next day, from that day on, I started miraculously getting stronger. I went off of my medications that they had me on for a couple years, off and on, all this stuff. And I had no side effects coming off of anything. I only got mind clarity, and I got stronger. My heart started getting stronger. Getting the chemicals out of my system, my mind became very aware and very clear again. My memory came back because my memory was highly affected by all of this. I could hardly what I had done 4 minutes ago. It's like reading a recipe to make a meal, and I couldn't remember what I just read. That's how bad it was. Yeah. All of that back. How I got my sleep back is also a miracle. And I'm not saying this is what's going to happen for you, but this was my miracle. When I got home, I said, okay, God, if you can create strength in my legs to get to the base of that mountain and into the mountain, then I know I'll be good. Get me into the mountain. So then I got a little bit stronger, got a couple minutes into the mountain. And then I had this thought as I looked over the valley that I missed the poppy season. So that's a flower season in Utah, these big, beautiful, bright orange red flowers that I love. I'm like, dang it, I missed it. And then as I was coming off the trail, I had this thought, go home and look up poppy herb. And I was like, okay. So I got on my phone, I looked up poppy herb, liquid herb, and I just ordered it. It was organic. It was like a water based. It didn't have alcohol in it or anything. And I got it in my hands and I looked up and I said, okay, what do I do with this? And I turned the bottle around and it said sleep. So then I had a feeling, and this is just from my experience, I had a feeling to take it for 3 days, 7 drops. I took it the first day, 7 drops. I slept through the night. I hadn't slept through the night in years. The second day, I slept through the night. The third day, I slept through the night. The fourth day, I said, okay, God, I'm done. Like, I want to take nothing. And I have it. And I've been sleeping through the night.
Love it.
Yeah, so I think, like, the biggest thing that we have to let go of and hold on to, we have to hold on to God and something higher, but we have to let go. We have to get pushed to the very brink of completely submitting everything, radically accepting everything, that maybe it won't change. So God, if this does change, I'm grateful. God, if this doesn't change, I'm okay too.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you feel with so much gratitude for just what is, and you're like, I give up my will completely, because I did. I was like, I couldn't do nothing. I was giving up maybe being married, maybe living, maybe being a mom. I mean, I was literally saying, God, just take it all. I don't want to anymore. And he stepped in and showed me, guess what? He's like, I got you.
Yeah.
And so after I started sleeping, I just have started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. My cardiologist said, ask, you know how to feed your body. Feed it good whole foods. Intuitively eat. Don't be obsessive or restrictive. Go with what your body's telling you it needs, which I did. I was on like raw milk there for a while because that's all I felt like I needed to eat to rebuild my body. And then, yeah, I just continued to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's the first step, is you connect to God. The second step that I would tell you is you have to reconnect to you. You have to trust yourself. And not in an egotistical way, in a humble way. Just trust yourself. Just go inside and be like, okay, what do I feel? What do I need? What am I lacking? You know? And then listen or write it down. You know, what I wrote some notes. With connecting to yourself, learn emotional self-regulation skills. Now, this could go back to getting into counseling as a form of self-care. Learn emotional self-regulation skills. Learn interpersonal relationship skills, because yes, this does not only affect you, it affects your children, it affects your spouse, it affects everybody around you. So just learning the interpersonal relationship skills, which I've also shared at church now, are so vital, because it creates real intimacy with those you love most and real unity with those you want it most. And then number 3, so after you've done that, once you've connected here and then you've connected here, then you can give out here. And you can give out, right? And I think a lot of us, especially, I think more so women, but that's just my personal opinion. I think we go here and then here. we forget the here.
You forget the inside. Yeah.
We go to self-sacrificial by self-sacrificing a lot, because it's innate in us to be caregivers, right? We sacrifice ourselves to make sure the other person is taken care of first. And granted, you have to do that with, like, you know, babies and things, but always you have to have at least 30 minutes of self-care every single day. And that's different for everyone, you know, like what is that like for you? Like, what does self-care mean to you?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I just met with a new friend of mine, Andrew, who is a veteran of some major battles both in Iraq and Afghanistan, and his advice was, take care of yourself first. Make sure that you have taken care of yourself, because once you're at a place where you've dealt with your demons, you've mastered some skills in your life, you then have the opportunity to face outward, just like you're saying. So I love hearing that same concept over and over again reiterated. It just means it's real and it's true.
Well, it's like love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, that means you've got to
Love yourself
first, your neighbor, or you actually can't. You actually can't love in the greatest of capacities if you don't have self-love. And I'm not talking about egotistical, conceited selfishness. It's very different. Self-love is like humble confidence, and it does mean taking care of yourself. It does mean getting dressed for the day, and for women, even maybe if they want to put on makeup or exercising, a lot of things that sometimes people will go, well, that's selfish. I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. Maybe in excess, yes. Maybe if you're doing it and ignoring your kids, yes. If they need that need right in that moment and you're ignoring them, yes. But if you're taking that time to take care of your temple, then you can see everything around you 100 times more, 100 times better.
Yeah.
You gotta put the mask on yourself first, right? And then on.
Yeah. You've spoken some clear things here, and I appreciate your vulnerability during this interview. I love the fact that you've expressed how dark it was, how deep it was, how hopeless sometimes it was and it got, because we can relate to that. And now coming out on the other side where I'm at now in my journey and my wellness, there's hope, there's light, there's beauty again, there's creativity, there's art, there's music, there's connection. All of that is so critical. And in the last 2 minutes here, Ashley, what advice would you give to somebody who's listening today who can relate to how you're feeling right back then, right now?
I would give you the enough equation so that you are enough. And I'll play this game with you. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions.
Yeah.
Where do you get your worth from?
That's a great question. I think back to my mother's teachings, and she passed in 2010, but she used to always tell me that I was special, and I said, yeah, but everybody's special. And she's like, no, to me, you are special. You have a mission to do in this life to help other people. I think part of my self-worth starts with her. Oh,
that's sweet. I love that. Yeah, your worth, I think, can be, told by other people. And your worth actually is innate. It's divine. You actually can't change it. It came with each person that came here.
True.
So your worth was already set before you even came to this earthly realm. Like, you were worth something. I mean, if you look at a baby, like, is it worth something? It just sits there and, like, eats and poops and vomits or whatever. It still has worth, right? So, like, if us as adults, if we become incapacitated or we can't walk or we get injured or whatever, that doesn't diminish our worth.
Mm-mm.
Like, it's complete and it's whole and it's there. It's just how you're able to process what worth is. And if you always know that your worth actually can never be destroyed, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm awesome. So that's your first leg. And then you need 2 legs to walk on with being enough. You need 2 legs. So your first leg is your worth. Okay, you got your worth. You got 1 leg, but it is hard to walk on 1 leg. So your second leg is your power. So where do you get your power from?
Well, I know I get my power from my relationship with God. Yeah.
Yeah. Your power is really awesome. Your power is your ability to choose. It's your agency. Nobody can take that away from you. Like, I was incapacitated. Everything that I knew externally outside of me, and even somewhat internally, right? Like with my physical body breaking down, felt like it was being taken away from me. However, I was still powerful because I always had a choice. Maybe some choices were being made for me against my own will because I can walk or whatever. And also, I still had a choice of how I was going to view that experience. And also, I wasn't always in this awesome mindset either, by the way. Completely human, completely broken, completely dark. I didn't always have it together because it was so excruciatingly hard on all levels, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. It was just destroying me inside.
Yep.
And so with power, I thought, oh my gosh. And I learned this skill before all this happened. I'm like, I do have power just because even my home was uprooted. I mean, people were packing my boxes, taking my things. I was like, I cannot place my power in anything external, right? And God wasn't showing up there in front of me saying, like, I'm here.
Right.
You know? So I said, okay, I'm powerful because I can choose right now. I can choose if I'm going to breathe. I can choose if I'm going to connect with my child today. Even if it's just laying flat on the bed. I can choose to try to laugh, even though I feel like all humor was taken from me, which is not like me.
Mm-hmm.
I could choose to try to connect with my husband. I could try to choose to lay in the sunlight on the grass. You know, I could still choose my response to what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you powerful. So if you are enough, that's the enough equation. So you are enough because you're always worth something. Always. Nobody can destroy that, take that, change that. Only you can. And you are powerful because you have a choice. Always. Even if it's like a choice to just think a different thought because your body's not working.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't look for writing. But yeah, so that's what I would say. I'll just leave you with the enough equation that you guys, you know, that was the deepest C4 wound that I've had to overcome, was that I always felt like I was never enough. And now I know I am. And so I just would leave that gift with you to tell you that in whatever state, mindset, wherever you are on that healing path or not, that you are always enough because you are powerful and because you are worth everything. You're worth it. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. Ashley, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for joining us and imparting your wisdom from your experiences that I think will definitely be a benefit to the people who are listening and watching today. And I hope everybody's taken some notes. I'll put Ashley's contact information below if you want to contact her or even the agency that she supports, so you can try to support them as well in her refugee efforts. And again, thank you, Ashley, for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Bye.
Bye.